because I don't know if I might get lost in translation. So let me just go ahead and read it slowly.
Yeah.
And as Americans love to do when speaking to a multilingual audience, maybe I should say it louder. I won't. We need to increase public understanding of the need for medical countermeasures, such as a pan-coronavirus vaccine. A key driver is the media, and the economics will follow the hype. We need to use that hype to our advantage to get to the real issues. Investors will respond if they see profit at the end of the process. End quote.
That's really, I mean, Peter Doshi, wasn't he the one who...
No, Peter Daszak.
Oh, Daszak.
Peter Daszak, the head of EcoHealth Alliance.
Okay.
Peter Doshi is the good guy.
Yeah, I was just...
Peter Daszak, the person who was independently corroborating the Chinese non-lab leak, non-theory, because there wasn't a lab leak. This was an intentional bioweaponization of spike proteins to inject into people to get them addicted to a pan-coronavirus vaccine. This has nothing to do with a pathogen that was released, and every study that's ever been launched to try to verify a lab leak is a red herring.
And there's really nothing that is new in this.
Nothing. Zero. 73 patents on everything clinically novel. 73 all issued before 2019. And I'm going to give you the biggest bombshell of all to prove that this was actually not a release of anything, because patent 7279327, the patent on the recombinant nature of that lung-targeting coronavirus, was transferred mysteriously from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill to the National Institutes of Health in 2018. Now, here's the problem with that. Under the Bayh-Dole Act, the U.S. government already has what's called a march-in right provision. That means if the U.S. government has paid for research, they are entitled to benefit from that research at their demand or at their whim. So explain why in 2017 and 2018, suddenly the National Institutes of Health have to take ownership of the patent that they already had rights to, held by the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And how did they need to file a certificate of correction to make sure that it was legally enforceable? Because there was a typographical error in the grant reference in the first filing. So they needed to make sure that not only did they get it right, but they needed to make sure every typographical error that was contained in the patent was correct. On the single patent required to develop the Vaccine Research Institute's mandate, which was shared between the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill in November of 2019 and Moderna in November of 2019, when UNC Chapel Hill, NIAID, and Moderna began the sequencing of a spike protein vaccine a month before an outbreak ever happened.
You have all the evidence, right?
Yep.
I'll have to translate this. Wo waren wir jetzt eben? Ah ja, am 5. Juni 2008 haben Airblings und was heute Sanofi ist, oder beide zusammen ein Patent beantragt auf so ziemlich alles, was mit diesem, also die RNA-Strands, die Subcomponents der Gene-Strands, also auf so ziemlich alles, was mit diesem SARS-Coronavirus zusammenhängt. Das Interessante daran ist, dass etwa um dieselbe Zeit oder kurz danach DARPA, das ist so ein Verteidigungsministeriums, also eine Militäreinheit, bevor die sich für dieses Coronavirus aktiv interessierten, als eine Biowaffe. Danach wurden Patente auf wiederum so ziemlich alles eingetragen für Airblings Sanofi in nicht nur 2015, sondern 2016, 2019. Ich glaube, eben hat er gesagt, insgesamt 73 oder sowas, 73 Patente. Also da kann es nichts Neues mehr gegeben haben. Alles wurde patentiert. Das Paper, was das Neue, also man muss, um irgendetwas patentieren zu lassen, muss man was Neues haben. Nur natürliche Dinge kann man nicht patentieren. Das Paper, was das Neue identifiziert hatte, sagt selber, dass es 17 Patente zwischen 2008 und 2019 einschließlich für das Spike-Protein gegeben hat. Das war, bevor es überhaupt ein SARS-Outbreak gegeben hat. Nein, er sagt, nein, das stimmt nicht. Es gab gar kein SARS-Outbreak, sondern wir haben das selber ausgelöst. Und ich glaube, das war auch wieder dieser Peter Daszak, als der sagte, oh mein Gott, jetzt ist das Coronavirus aber wirklich bereit und gefährlich, auch Menschen krank zu machen. Zu diesem Zeitpunkt war das alles patentiert. Also erinnern Sie sich daran, nicht nur das Virus selbst war patentiert, sondern auch schon die Behandlung, die Vakzine, die Behandlungsmöglichkeiten waren auch schon patentiert. Er hat eben ein besonderes Zitat von diesem Peter Daszak gemacht. Ich habe einen Clip von dem gesehen, wo er einer Gruppe von wahrscheinlich Wissenschaftlern und Investoren gesagt hat, dass man damit eine Menge Geld machen kann mit diesem Virus aus 2015. Und dieses Zitat lautet, wir müssen das öffentliche Verständnis befördern dafür, dass es eine Notwendigkeit für solche Impfungen gibt. Das wichtigste Mittel dafür, dieses öffentliche Verständnis zu fördern, sind die Medien. Die wirtschaftlichen Folgen werden automatisch dem Hype folgen, der durch die Medien kreiert wird. Und auf diesen Hype werden dann potenzielle Investoren reagieren, wenn sie sehen, dass man am Ende damit sehr viel Geld verdienen kann. Das hat er zweimal vorgelesen.
You don't have to read it again.
No. You speak German, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Dieses Spike-Protein wurde kreiert, um die Menschen abhängig machen zu können von einem weltweit verwendeten Corona-Impfstoff. Wie gesagt, 73 Patente gibt es auf alles, was angeblich im Jahre 2019 neu war. 73 Patente, bevor man dieses neue angebliche Coronavirus in 2019 ausrief. Es wurde dann das Patent das war glaube ich auch im November 2019, von der Chapel Hill University in North Carolina übertragen auf die NIH, obwohl komischerweise das ja eigentlich schon längst da sein müsste. Da waren aber ein paar Fehler gemacht worden. Tatsache ist jedenfalls, dass dieses Virus, diese beiden Punkte muss man festhalten, dass dieses Virus lange schon vorher patentiert war, die Behandlungsmethoden lange vorher patentiert worden waren. Das alles sollte geheim gehalten werden. Deswegen gab es Schmiergeldzahlungen seitens der CDC an das Patent Office, damit das keiner rauskriegt. Und diese Impfungen wurden in Szene gesetzt. Dafür hat Dr. Martin den Evidence, also die ganzen schriftlichen Beweise. Dieses Virus wurde erfunden und patentiert und die Impfstoffe dazu, um damit richtig viel Kohle zu machen. Das ist eigentlich alles, worum es geht. So it's all about money.
It has always been about money. And just to answer a question that was asked slightly earlier, the script for this was written first January 6, 2004.
January 6, 2004. Who wrote the script?
Merck. And a conference called SARS and Bioterrorism. Bioterrors and emerging infectious diseases, antimicrobials, therapeutics, and immune modulators. Merck introduced the notion of what they called the new normal. Proper noun, the new normal, which is the language that became the branded campaign that was adopted by the World Health Organization, the Global Preparedness Monitoring Board, which was the board upon which the Chinese director of Center for Disease Control, Bill Gates's Dr. Elias of the Gates Foundation, and Anthony Fauci sat together on that board of directors. But the first introduction of the new normal campaign, which was about getting people to accept a universal pan-influenza, pan-coronavirus vaccine, was actually adopted January 6, 2004. So it's been around quite a long time. I'm not going to belabor many more points other than to say that it was very clear that Merck knew that Moderna knew that it was going to be placed in the front of the line with respect to the development of a vaccine in March of 2019. And this is a very important date, because in March of 2019, for reasons that are not transparent, they suddenly amended a series of rejected patent filings, which is a very bizarre behavior. But they amended a number of patent filings to specifically make reference to an intentional or accidental release, their term, deliberate release of coronavirus. So in March, they amended 4 failed patent applications to begin the process of a coronavirus vaccine development. And they began dealing with a very significant problem that they had, which was they relied on technology that they did not own. 2 Canadian companies, Arbutus Pharmaceuticals and Acuitas Pharmaceuticals, actually own the patent on the lipid nanoparticle envelope that's required to deliver the injection of the mRNA fragment. And those patents have been issued both in Canada and in the US and then around the world in their world intellectual property equivalents. Moderna knew that they did not own the rights and began trying to negotiate with Arbutus and Acuitas to get the resolution of the lipid nanoparticle patented technology available to be put into a vaccine. And we know, as I made reference to before, that in November, they entered into a research and cooperative research and development agreement with UNC Chapel Hill with respect to getting the spike protein to put inside of the lipid nanoparticle so that they actually had a candidate vaccine before we had a pathogen allegedly that was running around. What makes that story most problematic, beyond the self-evident nature of it, is that we know that from 2016 until 2019, at every one of the NIAID Advisory Council board meetings, Anthony Fauci lamented the fact that he could not find a way to get people to accept the universal influenza vaccine, which is what was his favorite target. He was trying to get the population to engage in this process. And what becomes very evident with Peter Daszak, EcoHealth Alliance, UNC Chapel Hill, and others, and then most specifically by March of 2019, in the amended patent filings of Moderna, we see that there is a epiphany that says, what if there was an accidental or an intentional release of a respiratory pathogen? And what makes that particular phrase problematic is it is exactly recited in the book A World at Risk, which is the scenario that was put together by the World Health Organization in September of 2019. So months before there's an alleged pathogen, which says that we need to have a coordinated global experience of a respiratory pathogen release, which by September 2020 must put in place a universal capacity for public relations management, crowd control, and the acceptance of a universal vaccine mandate. That was September of 2019. And the language of an intentional release of a respiratory pathogen was written into the scenario that, quote, must be completed by September 2020.
This was the text where Mrs. Brundtland was heading this commission, isn't it?
Well, this is the Global Preparedness Monitoring Board's unified statement. There are a number of people who have taken credit and then backed away from credit for it. But yes, you're right.
Am I right too when I say that also the ACE2 receptor that it was already described in the patents before 2019?
Yes, we have 117 patents with specifically the ACE2 receptor targeting mechanism for SARS coronavirus.
So because they always say this is the new thing with the virus.
No, it's not new, and it has not been even remotely new. It's in publications going back to 2008 in the weaponization conferences that took place in Slovenia, in Europe, all across Europe, and all across the DARPA infrastructure.